Hey guys, this is Bella. Before we start this week's episode, I wanted to let you know that we are continuing on from last week's conversation where we discussed Nike's perspective of art as protest. If you guys haven't had a chance yet, we would love for you guys to go and listen to that episode first before continuing with this one. And we will be wrapping this conversation up next week. So we hope that you guys have enjoyed what we have prepared for you guys so far. Thank you so much. Hello, my people from everywhere. Welcome to It Ain't New, the show that represents the history of ethnic minority groups in the USA and where knowledge becomes power. If you don't know, now you know. I'm Bella.
Star. Nike.
Your very real hosts. Well, actually, so you were talking about like Disney Plus, right? So this is kind of funny because the entire time we've been talking about this conversation, I've literally just like, my mind is like zeroing in and zoning in on one movie. Did y'all watch the movie Hidden Figures?
Yeah. Probably more than once, yes.
Yeah.
Read the book too.
You read the book?
I haven't read the book yet. I'm going to have to read the book.
I'm like, it's just like, oh my God. Oh, shakes and shivers.
Because I hope these are good shakes and shivers.
Oh, they're great. Like, let me put it this way. I did not watch any American-made film for about a decade in my life. And you know what movie broke it?
With that. Wow. It was Hidden Figures. Wow.
Yeah. And I watched it.
Interesting.
I watched it because how do you, as you know, you guys know this, right? Like how, as someone who's very clearly not white, and you go through a world where you're like, I don't see people who look like me. And all of a sudden you're seeing a poster where it's like 3 very black women dressed very sharply are walking right towards you with like this sense of purpose. And you're seeing this poster and you're just like, I need to know that story. Like, I need to hear it. I need to see it. And so anyway, for those that haven't watched Hidden Figures, like, first off, go watch it. Secondly, spoilers are ahead. So
sorry.
Yeah. To me, it's like these 3 main figures, right? It's Katherine Johnson, portrayed by Taraji P. Henson, Dorothy Vaughan, portrayed by Octavia Spencer, and Mary Jackson, portrayed by Janelle Monáe. And these 3 women were astounding mathematicians during their time. And they were working for, I actually find this really funny.
And you're talking about a time which is within our generation.
Within like 2 generations of us.
Yeah. Like this was the 60s?
This was during the space race in the 60s. But, so this is funny for me verbally because it's like, oh, weird. Because they were called the computers. And I remember hearing
Human computers.
Yeah. In the movie, when I first heard it, I was like, what?
Because there was once a time when we didn't have computers.
Yeah. And I was like, why are you guys referring to people as things? And then I realized, no, it's computers because they compute.
Yes.
And they're very good at what they do. But then I'm a mid-90s baby, so I've never heard this like in this context. So just a reminder, right? Generational differences. But my favorite part was probably the scene where Katherine Johnson is made to explain like why she takes so long just to go use the bathroom.
And she takes like 30 minutes.
Yeah. Like upwards of 30 minutes. And it's like, for us, it's like, what do you mean? That 30 minutes is like not that long. It's like, no, she was busy during this time. Like, why as like, well, again, we mentioned she's black, right? Mm-hmm. And this is segregation era USA. And of course, like this has been what it's been for at this point in US history, probably close to 100 years, if not longer, technically.
Yeah.
But segregation USA post Civil War, right? Like 100-ish years. And so she's made to literally run in kitten heels and a very tight form-fitting skirt.
Because that's part of the dress code.
Yeah,
because it's a part of the dress code.
And that was the only stuff that women were allowed to wear for work. Like, we didn't get to wear pants. What?
Oh, and mind you, she's also taking her work with her. Like, she's not just going to the bathroom to use the bathroom. She's
like
literally
these big armfuls of binders of other people's work that she needs to double check now.
Yeah.
And so she's running, sweating in the southern heat.
And why is she running?
She's running because she already knows she's on the clock.
Oh,
She
not
leaves-
the running part. Like, why is it taking her so long?
So
because the bathroom
is like half a mile away from her.
because there is a separate bathroom
Yeah.
for
Segregation.
colored people.
Yeah.
Yes. And she ended up being called out to this one area where she was the only black person in
Right.
that area. There
And
was no bathroom for her.
This was like, oh, this is where you want to be if you want to be somebody within what eventually became NASA,
Mm-hmm.
the Langley Research Center. And
And
or-
they had no bathroom for colored women.
they had only had one, and that was on the colored section of the campus, which meant
Mhm.
she had to go running from whatever floor she was
Across
on,
campus.
cross campus, in the sun, in the heat, in the rain,
In heels.
in heels,
In heels and a dress or a skirt.
and no paved road.
That too.
That
Mind you, also their bathrooms were not
it was nowhere
well taken care of
yeah.
either. So
So like she is now like she has to do this every day, and she's like, this is my life. This is normal. But then she gets called out, and now she's being made to explain her existence and why she has to do it. And she's like, I am trying to live within your rules that you set up for me. And FYI, I do not have the same permissions that you guys have. That's
You white men have.
Right.
Exactly, because her boss is a white man, of
Yeah.
course. Duh. So she is now like being visibly disregarded and disrespected by her white male coworkers, but also subtly by her boss. And in that moment, she loses it. And to me, like that moment shows all the suppressed anger and rage that she as a woman has to go through, because she's also a widow and she's
Mhm.
also a single mother to 3.
yeah.
And she's, being questioned like, well, are women as good as men at math? When she has like 3 advanced degrees in mathematics and like applied mathematics from like very well-known schools. Literally, hi, she's at NASA. Can you do better math than her? But
And again, they were doing this without computers.
yeah.
Like without computers that we use now.
And she had to double check all her coworkers' work, and they would not give her all the information. That was the part that like blew my mind. Like she could figure out what they were working on when they refused to tell her.
Right.
I was like, yeah, what? So anyway, so that's not to say that only Catherine's character in this film had such a moment. It's not to say like, oh, it's only her. But it is Taraji P. Henson's performance in that one scene where she's screaming out all her frustrations and all her anger at just being made to justify why she exists and how she's existing. When again, she's just trying to exist within the rules that she's being given, within the parameters of her world. And that performance gets me every time. I just remember sitting in the theaters going, what just happened? But also like the entire room went silent.
And also, like, imagine this time too, and a lot of people don't know this. They always think that like segregation and these rules were just always like laws. No, they were not. This was not in. If anybody go back and read the actual Declaration of Independence before the Southerners who had slaves were like, we got to take this stuff out or we're not going to sign it.
Mm-hmm.
All of this stuff was not like when it literally said we were, all men are created equal. Of course, there's that. But even when it said that, like as crazy as he was when he wrote it, our good old president, what number president was he?
Which one are you talking about?
We're talking about Thomas Jefferson.
2.
Third.
No, 3.
3, yes.
Because we forgot John Adams there.
Oh, yeah, exactly. But yeah.
Who was not a slave owner?
Who?
John Adams.
Oh, whoa.
Neither was his son.
Oh, that's
It's like
that's
in the
a fun
first
fact.
in the first 20 presidents, only 2 of them did not own slaves.
Yeah.
Adams and his
Wow.
son
Mhm.
Quincy.
Wow.
I
Oh,
only
that's
learned
interesting
that
to
this year.
know. What?
Yeah.
See, why you would think
Fun
somebody would be like
fact!
you would think somebody would be like banging down people's doors like John Adams didn't own any slaves. Like,
But granted, that's like he also had one of like the lesser well-known presidencies.
yes.
And so,
But
like, that's the one thing he's known
He
for.
also had a wife that influenced him in a lot of those things too. Like he
She
actually listened to
No,
what
I
his
mean,
wife was
think about this.
presenting as well.
They raised, like he raised his son in an environment where then his values got passed on.
Right.
There were so many other presidents where those values were not being taught at home.
Exactly.
No. Yeah.
But yeah, like reading, like even going back and reading and looking at the context of a lot of our even like American laws and stuff, that was never in there.
Yeah.
Those were never clauses until they made them clauses.
Because they're all of a sudden like, wait, these were social rules that we just all accepted. And now we got to enshrine them.
Even then, because like think about also Thomas Jefferson was not necessarily one of the like well-liked presidents. He was not even well-liked when he was just, you know, a person because he was different.
When did he get a PR team? Because
Thomas Jefferson?
For real. That's what I want to know too.
But
right?
the thing is, you have to
Tom-
remember, Thomas Jefferson was always a very good writer. So him, Hamilton, Adams, like all of them were.
no, but how does one change the perspective of him like centuries after his death?
But
like,
remember-
who was the
remember-
PR team on that?
remember, technically, right? This is what we're talking about
Yeah.
with our podcasts.
Oh yeah.
So, but it's Taraji P. Henson's performance in Hidden Figures that actually made me rethink in what ways are the members of the LGBTQIA community, the African American community, the Hispanic Latinx communities, all these other more disparate communities and less well-funded communities that we have, right? How are they being impacted by things that perhaps I see, but I don't have to consciously, constantly deal with? And what are like the little things that are so deeply ingrained in our society that I don't realize can be extremely unhelpful or even worse, hurtful? So for me, like, I see our existence in a society that doesn't always want us around to be a form of nonviolent protest, right? I see it as a way of protesting. We exist. You can't do anything about that. And
Well, you can.
But
I was like, there have been attempts.
Yeah.
but we
Just saying.
continue to exist.
Some people want to make attempts.
Right.
Like, and we will continue to exist even if they keep continuing those attempts, right? And we have our choices on how we exist. We also have our decisions to stand up for each other, right? Like the fact that we choose to stand up for each other, to speak out for each other, is also a way of like saying, hey, we exist, we're gonna take up space, and you can just go suck it. Like, that's kind of where like my mind went watching that whole performance. And anytime someone's like, but really, why are we like needing to be more inclusive? I'm like, clearly someone needs a lesson. But perhaps like more importantly, it's more like if Nike is thinking like art is culture, is protest, right? And yes, art is protest. Like I literally just was talking about Hidden Figures as a protest as well. But I also see education as protest, because if you don't know, you're never going to know. And you can't know what you don't know. And if you don't know it, you can't do better about it. So knowledge is power. And if we're willing to just continue to learn and educate each other, then like someone out there will hopefully be positively impacted, right? And they can help us to continue this fight. So it's not just 3 people in a room making a podcast, or like 4 people in a room writing these documents down and like making all these like, you know, all these videos and stuff. We have more and more people doing what they can all the time. And it's just like stuff like this where it's like, you know, it for me is this image that if we have one person who's doing it, it allows, you know, it's a domino effect.
So it allows like others to get involved.
Right.
And yeah.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, that's like most of this media is also teaching. Because again, there's a movie coming out that I have to go see that's literally about this black man who was basically like in French, like,
Oh yeah.
like upper like wealthy culture in like I want to say like the 1700. I can't remember the name right now either.
It starts with a CHE. I
Something.
can't pronounce it.
Something
It's
or another,
French.
but he's like, yeah, it's a French word, and it's like these movies, especially with like Hidden Figures, like they're coming out and they're literally teaching like, oh, this is
You mean
not
reteaching?
Exactly.
Reteaching,
they're
representing.
right, reteaching what was there, because like in our intro episode, like we had talked about a lot how like Bella and I ended up meeting.
Right.
And I told her about this woman named Biddy Mason.
I got so fucking pissed after, not because like, oh my God, how dare you bring up Biddy Mason, but literally because like, how the fuck did I not know about her? As a lifelong Los Angelino, like, how did I as a kid growing up here not know about her?
Exactly.
Why
like,
didn't I realize this?
Yes. For people who don't know, Biddy Mason was actually a former slave, and I have to say former slave because she was actually made to walk from behind all of the horses too, which I was like, are you serious,
Which
dude?
I believe she was also pregnant at the time.
Yeah, she was pregnant at the time. And I think she was carrying a smaller child too. So So she's carrying a smaller child. She's walking barefoot from freaking Oklahoma, I think.
I think it was she was first noted in Oklahoma.
Yes, that's when they first like figured out that like where she was.
I think she was marching from like Georgia.
Yeah, she had Mormon masters, and they had literally, because they heard about all the stuff that was happening in California, like the gold rush and like everything like that.
Can
So
make
they
money.
literally bring her, and while she's pregnant, again walking barefoot behind the horses to California. Someone goes, oh, you know, California's a free state, right? She was like, oh, really? So she sues her master, gets her freedom, because they're like, yeah, you can't have slaves here. Mind you, he was actually trying to take her to, he wasn't going to stop in California.
No.
He was trying to take her to like Colorado or something like that, because
yeah.
no one would, or Montana, because no one would like know there
No,
to
I think
tell
what
her.
it was he was going to Utah.
Yes, something like that. Because because Mormon.
He's
duh.
Mormon.
Yeah. And he was trying, but he tried to take her away fast, right? Tried to take her so that she would not know, but somebody had already told her, and she was like, oh, I'm going to take you. So she wins her freedom. She, of course, you know, her babies and everything are free now too. Wins her freedom. Ends up, she's a midwife as well. So people coming into LA, of course, there's no real hospitals, and especially if you're not white, like, please.
You're not like, what hospital for you?
So she ends up becoming one of the wealthiest landowners in LA. Turns this land, literally is like, there's like one, we're thinking also like early 1900s, like there's only one like
she chose
grocery
downtown.
store. She chooses downtown, which is why we see all of the missions in downtown too. So she tells these grocers here, hey, if anybody comes in and they don't have anything to pay, put it on my tab, essentially. And that was what was happening to anybody coming into LA that did not have the funds to get something to eat or drink or anything like that.
So the other thing is, we briefly talked about her lawyer. Her lawyer was technically, if I remember, so actually let me backtrack. It was her oldest daughter's boyfriend at the time.
Yes.
Who was like, by the way, you all are free.
Yeah.
Because California is a non-slave state. And then that was when she was like, wait, my daughter's boyfriend is telling me this. I can keep my family together and free. And then her lawyer is also black. Who, like, she maintained all her relationships with all these people. And when they needed her, she represented, and she's like, let me take care of you. And so the reason why I got so mad, besides the fact that, like, how the heck did I not know this, was like, why, as someone who works with, you know, the youth of all these underprivileged all these underprivileged groups, right? Like, why didn't I think that this was not possible back in the 1800s? Why was I like, oh no, like, this is new. Like, we're all helping each other like now. Yeah, we're all helping each
Like
other.
mutual aid is some new thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that got me really mad because it's like, I've had, you know, like, mutual aid for me has always been a thing in my life. But like, why didn't I think it was possible? Why didn't I think an ex-slave, a former slave, could do this, right? And she could feed people and take care of people, and she didn't care if you were Mexican or if you were black or if you were white or if you were Asian or like, you're female, male. Like, she didn't care. All she cared was like, hey, you're here, you're my people now, I can like take care of you, and I'm going to.
Right.
So that was why I got really mad. But it's also this feeling of anger, right? That actually pushes me to work on this particular podcast. Like, it's this anger because whose legacy is being disregarded? Who's being dishonored? And who is being in their death, right? is having their existence retroactively, posthumously wiped out and then rewritten as much as possible.
Sure. Like, why does Thomas Jefferson get a PR team,
Yeah.
but somehow Biddy doesn't?
Right.
Although I will say this, Biddy is getting a very solid LA PR team right now because they are painting her murals.
Yes, they're
like,
repainting that mural.
yeah.
So I'm like, yes,
on
please.
Broadway, like at cafes. People are starting to notice her. But like, again, why is it like Thomas Jefferson? Like, you know what, Thomas Jefferson, your PR team can also do this. You had a freaking slave that you basically took as a wife, and you kept her in a freaking room with no windows and no walking space. Man, dude, what the fuck were you doing?
I was like, oh, there's way more to the
Oh
story.
yeah, you were telling me that night.
Yeah, I was like, oh, there's way more to that story that people don't want to talk about. But thank you all for listening to It Ain't New, where if you don't know, now you know. We're Nike,
Bella.
S-Star.
Please show us some love on Spotify by leaving us a rating or a review, and join our Patreon so we can grow and continue to give you all wonderful content.